Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon, Beyond Chat, Making the Most of Microsoft Teams. Your presenter today is Taylor Mercedes. She's our Senior Microsoft Solutions Consultant, and she'll be walking you through this presentation this afternoon. Just a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to Taylor today. If you're having any issues with your audio this afternoon, try toggling back and forth between either the computer audio or the dial-in number that you were provided at the time of registration. We see that the dial-in option is a little bit more reliable, but sometimes, as we all know with technology, that may flip-flop. So that's just a little reminder there. If you have any questions, please drop them into the questions panel of the GoToWebinar screen early on your right-hand side of the screen. It should pop up there. And if you have any questions that you think about when the survey pops up at the end of the presentation, please drop your question into there and Taylor will get back to them then. And that survey was mentioned. Let us know what we're doing great. Let us know what other information you want to see Taylor present on. Any feedback that you give us, we will take to heart and hopefully get that information out to you shortly, whether it be in a webinar or a question format. The handout is actually being provided today under the handouts panel of the GoToWebinar panel as well. And this presentation is being recorded this afternoon to be posted on our on-demand section of our website. So with that, Taylor, I'll pass that off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kaylee. I appreciate it. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for what's going to be the first of a three-part series on Microsoft Teams. Teams has really emerged as a champion in helping organizations work better through all the changes that we've all dealt with over the past year. That's why I'm so excited to be digging into how to get the most out of Microsoft Teams. I know a lot of organizations sort of adopted the platform haphazardly to meet the immediate needs that we've all had, and we really don't fully understand what it's capable of, or maybe haven't developed a strategy for using it. So I'm going to recommend that if your organization is using Teams, just take some time to step back, evaluate how you're leveraging that tool and how to get the most of it. Or maybe your team just needs some additional training or user enablement. And then even the folks who aren't using Teams yet, it's just a good strategy just to take a look at things before you dig in and be intentional about it. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join me to learn more about this and taking that first step in your journey of working with this application, learning more and building it out and doing it the right way. So, because it really can be a catalyst for growth and development and how your team works. So it's a really powerful tool. I'm excited to dig into it. So today what we're going to do is just dig into the basics of Microsoft Teams and go over some helpful tips and tricks on how to take advantage of the platform. I'll run through a quick agenda. Pull that up here. So real quick, what we're going to go over today is how and where to access Microsoft Teams. I'll do a run through of the Teams framework and the layout, how to use Teams to collaborate effectively, and then finally I'll go over some features and tools that are built into Teams that a lot of people just don't take advantage of all the time. So let's get started. Before I dig into the nuts and bolts of what you can do with Teams, I want to touch on all the different ways that you can access Microsoft Teams. So obviously we have the desktop app that we're all used to, but even the ones of us who are using the mobile app or using the web app, it's really easy to take for granted how accessible this platform is and everything that we can do with it. Because I do encounter folks on a regular basis who don't even realize that there's an app for Teams on their Android or their iPhone, or that they can just go on the web and access Teams from there. So just briefly, I want to go through these options, which you can do that with that. With the actual mobile app, you can download that onto your phone, and there's a huge amount of features within that app and what you can do there. And it's comparable to what you could do on your desktop app for some of the bigger things, so meetings and chat and things like that. You're able to send messages back and forth to your team. You can receive notifications about that. You can set your availability. So if you forget to mark that you're away when you're at your desktop, you can go on your phone and do that. And then you have the opportunity to even set quiet hours on your phone. So say you want to use your phone throughout the workday, but at the end of the day, you want to kind of wind down and you don't want to see those notifications anymore. You can go into Teams and control that so you're not having those boundaries crossed in terms of your work in your home. And then I know a lot of people, maybe you have a meeting coming up and you have to get in the car, you want to join that meeting. You have the opportunity to pull up that audio. You can do the video as well. I don't recommend it, obviously, when we're traveling for doing that, but you can, say you're sitting in an airport or whatever. You can do all that on your phone without taking your laptop out of your bag or whatever. You can do what you need to do. I know a lot of times if I step away from my desk, I take my phone with me. Maybe I'll get a chat from a colleague that I need to jump on right away. it's just really nice to have that in your pocket to be able to be connected in that way. The web version also has a ton of benefits. It's great if you need to switch computers temporarily, or if you need to work on a system that doesn't belong to you and access what you need. You can hop on the web version. It's teams.microsoft365.com. A way that I like to use the web version is I have external teams, so people outside of my organizations have shared their teams with me. Natively, you can't do that within the desktop app. You can't view two teams at once or two organizations at once. I like to have my external teams up on my web browser and my main one up on my desktop, so I can see all that information. If I'm working with that, it's usually customers that'll share that with me. I can see both at the same time. So that's a really great way to use it as well if there's a need. And then of course we have the desktop app. Most of us are familiar with that. That's going to be the most robust and feature-rich platform for accessing Teams. For most people, if you have an Office 365 subscription or Microsoft 365 subscription, this automatically gets installed. But if for some reason you don't have that app, you can download it for free from Microsoft. And then even if you're not using Teams, there's a limited version available for free on their website. So you can go and download that to be able to join meetings and just play around with it and see some basic features of what Teams can do if you're interested. Okay. So those are the different places you can access Teams. I want to run through just some basic components of Teams and discuss some of the details about the framework, so you have a good understanding of how it's kind of working on the back end and the front end of things. So when you're working in Teams, there's a number of things that you're going to be able to do. You're going to be able to access chat, calendars, files, and apps. But the key component when you're in Teams is collaboration. And most of that is going to happen within the actual teams and then the channels that are built under that. With Teams, defined by Microsoft, those are going to be groups of people who are brought together by work, projects, common interests, anything like that. So Teams may be defined as a department. Maybe it's a group of stakeholders in an active project. Some people do it by location. So if you have multiple buildings, you can have teams for all those different reasons. There really is no defined way on how you have to build your teams. It's really up to your organization what you guys want to do. So within those teams, so if you look at my slide here, you'll see the teams at the top level. You'll have those channels underneath. And essentially what the channels are for is breaking down those teams even further into smaller groups. So you can have specific topics that are relevant to folks in that group. You can have different projects. And the people within your channels don't have to be all of the people within your team. So you can pick and choose. Maybe only half of the people on the team need access to marketing. Maybe everyone needs access to overview. So you can pick and choose. You can make things private. You have a lot of control there. That general channel, that's something that's going to be for the entire team. So if you have announcements or anything like that, where the whole team needs to see it, you'll want to put that in the general channel. So before I dig in any further with what you can do with the teams and the channels, I think it's important to take a look at how you govern Microsoft Teams and how you go about creating these teams. So by default, anyone in your organization is able to create teams and channels, which can be really great in terms of active collaborations and establishing dynamic teams if it's done correctly. But what I see most of the time is Teams gets implemented, everyone's creating a bunch of teams and channels, and there's stuff all over the place. It becomes a giant mess. So you do have the option of circling back and locking down your teams so that not everybody can create them, which is something you can do. It'll give you some time to kind of organize things, get it under control. But what I recommend you do is once you have you have control over things, you can circle back and create a strategy for, okay, so who is able to create teams? Why might someone create a team? How do we want to structure them? What do we want to be in these teams? And then communicate that with the rest of your organization and make it so everyone can create teams again. Because you can really get a really rich experience if you set up those governing principles and just a framework for your staff to use when they're working in the environment. So, so before we go on further from here, there's a little bit of technical stuff, and I promise I'm not going to go too deep into technical stuff for this presentation, but I think there's a couple of things that are important to know just to understand how Teams works and just get a better grasp there. So like we talked about before, the Microsoft Teams and those channels, those are built on top of something called Microsoft SharePoint. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's a collaboration and document management platform within the 365 product suite. So a lot of organizations, they use SharePoint to store and access their company files in the cloud. So what happens when a team is created in Microsoft Teams is that a corresponding SharePoint site is created. And then within that site, when you create a channel, a document library is created, so essentially a folder. So if you share a file within Microsoft Teams, it gets put in SharePoint within those folders. And this really is important when it comes to considering where your data is being stored and how you're managing it. So I get a lot of questions about, okay, my data is in the cloud. What does that mean? How do I manage it? How do I make sure I don't have duplicates? So you say you have a file server in one place, but then you're sharing files back and forth in Teams. You need to come up with a strategy for how you're going to handle that stuff. And knowing that that data is stored in SharePoint and that you can manage it there. If you have third-party backups, which you should have for your cloud services, you can plug that in and grab that information and operate in that way. So it really does give you a lot of control there in terms of being able to know where your data is, administrate it, and have that control there. And then also when you're sharing files within chat, this is a little bit different than doing it with Teams and channels. When you're chatting and you share a file with someone, it actually stores it in your Microsoft OneDrive. So this is essentially your personal SharePoint. So these files are just yours. They aren't connected to the rest of your organization in terms of being able to see it. It's just stuff you can access. So you have the opportunity to control who you shared with through Microsoft OneDrive. And from an administrative perspective, if someone leaves your organization, those files are available in OneDrive. You can control that. You can save that information, and you'll be good there. The other part here that I want to touch on is Microsoft Graph. And this is a little more technical part I was talking about. So Microsoft Teams, along with pretty much every part of Microsoft 365, plugs into something called the Microsoft Graph. And what this is, that's the infrastructure that ties everything together within Microsoft 365. So when you create a calendar entry in Outlook, you're going to be able to see that in Microsoft Teams because of the Microsoft Graph. Same with other Microsoft 365 apps like Bookings. It's really like the train system underneath everything that allows that information to talk back and forth without you having to do anything. And the reason why this is relevant is because say you have other applications outside of Microsoft 365, which I'm sure you do, we all do. And a lot of times we deal with situations where you have information in one system and you say, man, I really wish I could have this plugged in over here. What we're going to have to do is do this duplicate work to make it show up. When you're operating in the 365 platform, you don't have to worry about that. Information in one place, when it's relevant, is generally going to be available somewhere in another place for you, which can be really helpful if you've ever had to tie those systems together. There's a lot of crazy technical work you have to do to make things talk to each other. So when we're looking at Teams and it becomes a hub for our work where you access everything, and this just becomes a place where we do all of our work, it's really nice to be plugged into those other 365 components. So we don't have to worry about that extra step of trying to force things to talk to each other. So it just makes things a lot easier to accomplish there. So I will jump into next, more of the fun stuff, less of the technical things here. I'll walk through some different ways that you can collaborate in Microsoft Teams. So most of us are familiar with chat and meetings. But obviously there's a bunch of different ways you can collaborate in Teams that most of us aren't taking full advantage of. So I'm going to pop up my demo environment here. Let me just do that real quick. And Kaylee, can you confirm that you can see my screen here?
Yep, I can see it.
You're able to see my team stuff?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to walk through real quick just a few different things we can do. So the first thing I want to touch on is we talked about our teams and our channels. So in my demo environment right here, you can see there's a number of different teams broken down in addition to channels underneath those. And before I dig in too much further here, I want to say, so this is a demo environment that Microsoft built for us. And I feel like this is a good example of bad governance within Teams. And the reason I say that is because we see a group here that says sales and marketing. And then down here, we have another marketing site, and then we have another sales site. And it doesn't feel like it's very cohesive in terms of what's been created. Maybe different people created different stuff. I feel like there's better ways to do this. You can kind of nest these things within each other. There's just a random project team sitting here. Maybe that belongs under one of these headings here. So there's better ways to do this. This is a good example of what not to do. So digging into these channels a little bit further, like I said, we have that general channel that everyone gets access to within the particular team. So anyone who's part of this retail team is going to see all the information that comes through here. So they're going to be able to see the post, any files that are shared within here, and any files anyone uploads that are relevant to the team. They're going to see that. Same as if you go to one of these other channels. So maybe not everyone in this retail group has access to the sales channel. You can pick and choose if you want to have access there. And we pop into one of these other ones here. So with this one, we have files, we have things like wikis, but also apps that are embedded within this team. So really, we can have our sales team working here. They're able to see the reports, able to collaborate back and forth. All of your files are here. So we can really use this as a hub rather than just a place to chat, which is really powerful. I will jump over into chat here in a second. I want to point out these icons right here are movable, which is kind of nifty. I moved them around for the purpose of this webinar, going down in order, but it's good to kind of know you can do that. So this is the chat window. Within here, you have the opportunity to chat with individuals within your organization. If you have it turned on, you can chat with other individuals and other organizations who have teams. Then you also have the option to do a group chat. So say I want to start a new chat here with Alex. Oh, bear with me. Okay, so I'm chatting with Alex. Shooting him a quick message here so I can learn how to tape. So there's Alex. But Alex and I are talking back and forth. We're working on a specific project. We decide that we need to bring Bianca into the conversation. So I go ahead and I click over here. And let's pull Bianca in. I add her, and what it does is it creates a whole different text chain over here. So Bianca's not going to get to see my conversation with Alex. We have our own situation going on where we can share our files and add apps if we like. Maybe we're working on something and I need to show my screen. I have a button to, within this chat window, show what's happening on my screen. And then maybe it just makes more sense for us to have a conversation, a video, or a voice call. We can pop this up and it's going to automatically create a call between the three of us all in that one spot, which is really cool. So lots of options there. On top of just being able to talk with each other via chat, there's all sorts of other collaboration options within here as well. So I'll jump into activity next. I feel like activity maybe gets overlooked a little bit. So essentially what this is, it's a log of everything that's happening in Microsoft Teams. So if someone reacts to something, you do. So they give you a thumbs up or they laugh at something, you're going to get a notification here. If someone posts something that within a team, you're going to get that notification as well. And if you get chats that come through. So say you are out for a day and you come back and you say, oh, I've got all this stuff going on in Microsoft Teams. Where do I even start? You can go into activities and see that log and look at the timestamps and prioritize what you want to deal with by just looking at that activities group that's over here. And it's just really it just logs everything that you have, so it makes it really easy to prioritize. And then also we have calling. So at a baseline, this is neat. You can do voice and video calls with people within your organization. But you can also, if your organization decides to, you can add licensing so you can do voice calling outside of your organization. So in this make a call section, what would happen is you get a keypad, so you could dial any number in the world. So this is really neat if you're already using, maybe if you're working from home, so you don't have to take your desk phone home, or you don't have a clunky extra piece of software on your computer to make phone calls. If you decide to take advantage of this, you can have all that stuff built right into Teams. You can have your voicemail, all your contacts, all of that exactly where you need it to be, which is really helpful. And then some phone systems, you can actually plug in your existing system into Teams. So use exactly what you have already in your office, plug that into Teams, and be able to make calls from there. So some really cool stuff there. I think Microsoft has some adoption promos going on right now as it relates to calling and conferencing and things like that. So if you have questions or you're interested, feel free to get in touch about that. Okay, let's see here. Next thing we've got our calendar. See, my demo user, she doesn't have much going on here, but if she did, anything in Microsoft Outlook would be copied over into our calendar here. You can choose to start a meeting right now and add folks to that. You can schedule a meeting from right here, add in whoever you want. So it looks very similar to what you would do in Microsoft Outlook. You can set things to repeat, add in attachments, everything that you need to do for scheduling an appointment. Close out of that. And then if you do have a Teams meeting scheduled on your calendar within Teams, a little purple button comes up that you can click join right from there. Okay, and then we have our files. So we talked about files a little bit earlier. So within here, you can see all the files that you have in Teams, which, like I said, is tied into Microsoft SharePoint. You have the option to search through those things, as well as all the other items within Teams, so your messages and all that. And then you can see everything that you've downloaded. And then, like I said, when you send messages with attachments through your chat, that sort of stuff is going to be here. You'll have the option to open that in your OneDrive. And when you go to OneDrive, you can manage, if you have it shared, like something like this, you can manage who you have it shared with. You can remove permissions. So it gives you all kinds of control there as well. Okay. So I'm going to buzz through some features here. One of the things I touched on is applications. So let me pop up the screen again here. So within Teams, like I showed you earlier, there are different applications you can have plugged in. So this one, it had Power BI, so we had some dashboards. And this plugs right into the Microsoft Graph thing I was talking about. So this goes in really easily. Anything that you've created in Power BI in terms of dashboards and things like that, it's really simple to put it into Microsoft Teams. But you can put in other apps too. So there's a number of apps that are from Microsoft. So things like Microsoft List, Planner is really powerful. It's a lightweight project management tool. So if you have a basic project that you're working on, you can assign tasks out. Obviously your Microsoft Suite, so your PowerPoint, SharePoint, things like that. You plug all of this into a team, into a channel, and you can open these as you go as they're relevant to you. In addition to the stuff that Microsoft has created, there is a huge amount of apps that are added to the the marketplace here that you can put in. So if you're using any third-party apps within your organization, I recommend just hop into here. You can access it from this little plus sign right here. You can go over to the 3 dots and search apps right here. Just plug them in, see if they're in there. If it's relevant, you can plug that into your Teams and use them right from here. And then if you have other applications that aren't in there, there are some options for building those into Teams. There's some customized work you can do to make that work for you. And then just a handful of other features. So when you're in a meeting, you have the option to have an attendance list. So when you're in that meeting, say we have a bunch of people in that meeting, you want to pull a list, you can download that, view their contact information, view everyone that was in there. Also app mentions. Let me pull up my demo environment again for you. So if you are within a chat or within a team, I can type at, 1 second here, at, and then maybe I want to tag Bianca, and it's going to highlight her name. And what it's going to do is when it sends it through, it's going to let that person know that they were tagged. So they're going to get a notification in their activities. If they don't see it for a while, they'll get an email for it. And this is actually something you can do in Microsoft Outlook too. Just good to know. If you have 365 and you have the Office Suite installed on your computer, you can start an email, type at and the person's name. And if they're using Teams and 365, it'll actually, in their preview of the message, say I'm talking to someone and I realize I need to pull Alex into the conversation or Bianca into the conversation. And I type at Bianca, do you have these reports ready for me? What it's going to do in their preview is actually show that text before all the rest of it, so they can see that's important and they get an extra notification for it. So it's really neat what you can do with those app mentions. You also have the option to do whiteboarding within Microsoft Teams. So if you're in a meeting, you can pull up a whiteboard by just clicking on those 3 dots, and you can save this information, and it really gives you like a conference room type experience that maybe you won't be able to get before if you're working from home. So you can do things like brainstorm and share information and share files and all that within this one hub here, which is really cool. You also can record your meetings. So I recommend if you have Teams, go ahead and take a look at what you can do with these dots here. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. So go ahead and click on those and take a look. You can record your meetings from there and save those and share those. Maybe someone missed a meeting, you want to share it to them. You can do that. You can turn on live captioning. So as people are talking in real time, it's going to write out that text for you and show you what they're saying. So if you get distracted and you look away for a minute, you can go back and look at the text. Or if someone has issues with hearing, they can read it out rather than having to listen, which is really great. And then there's things like custom backgrounds or ones that are built in. So if you're sitting at home in your home office, or maybe you're in an airport or wherever you may be, you can throw up a background to kind of block out the distractions behind you. And not only are there built-in ones from Microsoft, but you can build custom ones. So I know at Stanball Nest, when we do Teams meetings, we have a custom Stanball Nest background with our logo in it, which is really nice. So you can do that too. Okay, so quick polling question for everyone. I just want to get an idea of how your organizations are currently using Teams. So are you using it for chat? Are you using it for meetings? Maybe just the Teams and channels? Maybe some of you have the calling feature already enabled, but I'm sure there's some folks who don't have it at all. So I think that poll is being open now. Let's just take a look. Just go ahead and put in what you're using. It looks like it's probably going to be a good mix of things going on here. Okay. So yeah, small percentage of you guys aren't using it at all. Most of you are doing what most of us are, chat and meetings. So it's just, as you've seen today, there's a ton of things that you can do with it. I recommend definitely plugging into the additional webinars we're going to do over the next few weeks because it's super powerful. So, and then let's just talk about what you guys should do next. So we have all these really cool features and nifty things that we can use. I don't recommend you just jump in and say, oh, we're going to use all of it. You should definitely evaluate. So just take a look. How are you guys using Teams today? What do you want to accomplish with it? What are some of the features that make most sense for your organization? And then just have a conversation about how should that be rolled out? What's the best way to introduce this to our organization? How do we structure it all? And just be really intentional and pragmatic about it. And then obviously we have user enablement. So that's more than just user training. It's more than just having a day on a webinar of going over what you can do with it. It's plugging into your users, seeing how they're using things, and just giving them the tools to succeed. Microsoft has a ton of really great resources. If you need help with any of these steps, from the start to finish, really, and we have some really great reports we can run to get an idea of how your organization is using Teams now, and can help you from start to finish in terms of user enablement and getting you to make the most of what you have for Teams. So I'm going to take a quick look at questions, and we'll see if anyone has popped anything up. Just a second here. So I'm not seeing any as of now. Oh, let me see. Okay. Bear with me a second. I'm having some trouble with my window. Kaylee, do you want to read out some of these questions? I'm having trouble getting them to come up.
Sure can. Let me look through these quick. Can apps be added and then deleted at a later date?
Yes, so I'll speak to that a little bit further. So by default, anyone in your organization, just like you can create teams and channels, anyone can add apps. You do have the opportunity to go back and delete those. And there's some back-end things in terms of security that you can go in and see which apps you guys have installed. You can set it so you can only install stuff from Microsoft, only those third-party ones, or lock out custom stuff. There's a lot of control you can have there in terms of what's there, what's not. From a security standpoint, it's just a good idea to have a good grasp of what you have in your environment, what apps are plugged in. But yeah, if you want to play with it, definitely feel free to go in and add apps. You can take them out. That's not difficult to do. So yeah.
Alrighty. Another question is, what was the website that you can find Teams online?
Sure. That's teams.microsoft365.com. That's going to bring you to the online version of Teams. If you don't have it already, it should prompt you to download it as well as an option. We probably have time for maybe one or two more. We've got it.
How do you delete part of a message? Someone sends me gifts and they don't, and she doesn't want to keep it. She thinks it clogs up her inbox. So can you delete part of a message?
Oh, I'm clicking just a second here. Clicking ahead too far. So if you send something, let me see here, you have the option, if you go into your chat, you can edit and you can delete. I don't think, let me see here. Yeah, you can't necessarily remove someone else's stuff. So they can do that. So if you send something and you don't want it to be there anymore, you can go in and delete it, or maybe you have a typo, you can edit, but you can't necessarily delete something someone else sent.
Alrighty, here's another one. How do I see other employees' calendars in Teams? Is that possible?
I would recommend doing that through Outlook as of now. So I don't believe there's a good way. They do make some suggestions, I think, when you're scheduling in, some scheduling suggestions. But if you want to view another employee's calendar, I would say just do that through Microsoft Outlook. You can, through Outlook, there's an option to make it a Teams meeting. So you just check that box. It'll add the Teams link just like you would have scheduled it through Teams.
Perfect. And there are so many more questions in here, Taylor, and it looks like we're out of time. So what I will do is pull this report and send it to you so you can reach out to all of these people individually and answer their questions.
All right.
So with that, if you wanted to wrap up here, you can go ahead.
Yeah, let me go ahead and throw out my contact information if anyone wants to reach out to me directly. If you need any help getting started with any of these pieces, if you're interested, oh, let me pop it back. If you're interested in having us run some reports on your environment, just let me know, reach out. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to help. But thank you guys so much for joining me. It's been great. And I hope you guys join me for the other webinars in the series. So have a great day.